Hey there folks! So, for those of you who are here after having watched the first weapon balance video I made regarding Scout and Soldier, welcome back. Glad you decided to stick around. If you haven't watched that one yet, I highly suggest you go back and do so, but if you're not interested in those two classes, I am completely understanding, and I'm not forcing you to click away from this video by any means. Regardless of all that, however, this video I'm going to be talking about the next two classes, Pyro and Demoman, and how they interact with each other. Before jumping into all my stupid ideas, however, I'm going to drop a quick TLDR summary of the first video's disclaimer. These are pretty basic things. I am not a game dev, I am not a pro tier comp player, I'm not really even that good at the game. Just super passionate about a 12-year-old source game that even most of its player base seems to complain about these days. So, yeah. Pyro! Okay, so Pyro recently got a major update that fixed a lot of the issues people had with him to begin with, and I will admit that Jungle Inferno was a great update. And it revitalized my love for the game thanks to the way that it showed that the TF team is still capable of changing classes in a way that benefits the game as a whole, something we haven't really seen from them in a long while. Was it perfect though? No, not really. The number of issues I still have with Pyro stem mostly from a few particular weapons, mostly in the form of expectation versus reality, so I'd hope to maybe give the Pyro the last little push they need into being a good little maniac once and for all. Before we get into all that though, I want to go over Pyrovision really quick. I think it would be really nice if when equipping any Pyrovision item, bar the goggles maybe, that you could select an alternative style or maybe flick an option in the menu to disable certain aspects of Pyroland. Namely, I would like to have the option to turn off the particles, the voice effect, and the special map designs. While I don't mind the special map designs too much, the voice effects have some pretty negative effects on the voice lines in the game, while the special particle effects can make fighting certain weapons, namely the Dragon's Fury, incredibly hard due to the seemingly non-existent opacity of the rain boom it shoots at you. Either way, Pyrovision is a minor section of TF2, and changing it wouldn't affect too much of the community or the game, except maybe increasing the pick rate of the Rainblower, Lollychop, and Balloonicorn. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the weapons. First on my chopping block is the flamethrower that everyone loves, the Degreaser. I'll agree that the Degreaser is probably the most versatile unlock the Pyro has available, allowing them to play a number of unique and fun ways at the cost of a little bit of damage, but I think therein lies the problem. As it stands, the Degreaser is a little too good for what it allows the Pyro to do. To start, I find it absolutely aggravating that a weapon that seems to be focused on comboing with your secondary or melee weapons still allows for the Pyro to just hold M1 and melt anyone in their path at what is essentially the same efficiency. An afterburn penalty is not really all that important since the mechanic got nerfed in Jungle Inferno anyway. Second, the additional 5 ammo cost for Airblast, while noticeable, isn't terrible in the long run since ammo is quite plentiful in Team Fortress 2, meaning the Degreaser is almost better than the stock, which I don't really care for, so that's why I'm here to give it a little bit more focus and properly balance it as a side grade. To start, I want the Degreaser to be a dedicated combo weapon, and to be the anti-WM1 playstyle. So to do this, I propose that the flamethrower do somewhere between -50 and -75% damage with its direct flames. Obviously, the weapon will be keeping its 60% holster speed bonus so as to pair with the Pyro's secondary of choice, but I would elect to bump off the draw speed so as to punish the Pyro for messing up his combo. In the same light, I'd also choose to bump off the Airblast cost penalty so the Pyro can more reliably combo. Now, in typical fashion, allow me to tack on a more controversial suggestion. My idea for it is that anybody lit on fire by it will take 20% more damage from that Pyro's secondary and melee weapon for the next 3 seconds. This is also why I chose to remove the draw speed bonus, so the Pyro can't insta-reset the afterburn. Finally, I think to limit those powerful 3 seconds even more, I've chosen to cut its afterburn duration in half, making it a very limited puff and sting option. Plus 20% damage on Pyro's other weapons can make for some pretty interesting damage combos. This makes most of Pyro's melee weapons do 78 damage, the back scratcher will now do 97, the extinguisher can do anywhere between 103 and 200. As for secondaries, the shotgun, flare gun, or a crit Manmelter would do about 108, while the other flare guns will do a various amount of damage ranging from 18 to 36. Obviously this means that some weapons are better than others for various reasons, but it's worth noting that the flare guns or even the Sharpened Volcano Fragment would reset the flames under their label, making it so that the Pyro would have to respritz their target with the Degreaser again to get the bonus damage. The extinguisher does effectively the same thing in this instance by extinguishing the target outright. This also makes items such as the Mad Milk, Girardi, or the Darwin's Danger Shield a very effective counter against the Degreaser. As a last little note, if any of you are afraid of it working well with a specific Pyro secondary, well, after the Jungle Inferno update, that isn't really a concern at all, but I think that does bring up a point of its own. Since the reserve shooter no longer works in tandem with the one thing it was originally added to Pyro for, I honestly think that the weapon should just be removed from Pyro entirely. Like, okay, you could argue that it allows them to punish jumpy soldiers or jetpack pyros, but that is so niche and could be so much better done with a multitude of different things. Plus, if they see you doing this, they'll just stop doing the thing you're going to punish them for. The problem with the reserve shooter in Pyro is that when it applies to Airblast, everyone hates it, but when it doesn't, it just isn't that reliable or useful. I guess my logic here is that if they can add it to Pyro after its release, they can just as easily remove it. So the Manmelter is a fairly underwhelming weapon, and honestly, that's really damn disappointing. I absolutely love the concept of the Manmelter, but I rarely see it used, and I rarely get to use it effectively myself. So, as a potential means of increasing its use, why don't we give it an effect upon hitting a burning player, just like all the other flare guns? I think having it recharge faster upon hitting a burning player would make it feel nicer, since as it is, not having a reload animation makes it feel unbearably slow. It's a small change, but one I wouldn't mind seeing to improve its viability, and it would be nice for when you're burning to death and you see your only pyro is using the flog, since that means they can extinguish you still. Besides, if the Manmelter is able to be used more effectively, maybe it'll get pyros to stop using the... Okay, so let's get this out of the way first. If there is any weapon on this list that I want it to be perfectly clear that I have an extreme bias against, it's this one. I fucking despise the Scorch Shot with a red, hot, flaming passion. Let's go over why. As it is right now, the Scorch Shot gets the following positives. Mini crits burning players, flares deal extreme knockback, flares have a large explosive radius, flares will bounce after hitting a target, allowing it to hit them twice, and despite being listed as a negative, allows for small flare jumps. The negatives are moderately less damage. Cool! You'd think that the Detonator, what with its signature ability would be the flare gun of choice for pyros that can't aim their flares, but no. The Detonator actually finds itself in the hands of some pretty damn skilled pyros, who can not only hit their flares using the explosion to cop an enemy that they just barely missed with precision timing, but also to gain mobility that no pyro should have, or, well, shouldn't have had. Instead, the Scorch Shot falls into the bumbling hands of two crowds. The players who don't quite know how to aim their flares, or the assholes who knew full well it's a piece of shit. The fact that it requires so little effort from the pyro to do so many things is infuriating to me. So, I thought of a way that would make it less aggravating to me and maybe other people in the process. Here's my version, with the focus of the weapon being on knockback, since that is a unique trait, for flare guns anyway. Hitting burning targets will deal mini crits and increase the knockback the flares do. However, the flares will retain their lower damage and will allow for normal-sized flare jumps akin to the Detonator. This makes the weapon's focus on knockback, but not giving it any of the other aggravating statistics in tandem. If the rogue flare bounding off the target is necessary because of the cinematic and the taunt, make it purely cosmetic. Just please. Okay, rant over. Let me throw out the next two very quickly so we can get into the last one for the pyro. Gas Passer. Make it combo with the Neon Annihilator. It'd be a neat little trick, since the pyro has to work for it. You can only get the hit off once on the target before the gas is gone, and it makes it viable on more maps for when you don't have Girardi or Mad Milk from a teammate. Third degree. Add a small damage penalty to make it no longer a direct upgrade, or make it lose damage as it goes down the chain, or make it divvy up the damage between the targets. It doesn't matter since the Fire Axe is terrible anyways, but direct upgrades are bad, so yeah, give it a nerf. Alright, so to finish up on Pyro, just as we did for Scout, we'll cover the absolute worst weapon for the class. I have only one idea for this one as opposed to the two that I had for Sun on a Stick, but it's a doozy. So to start, the downsides. The damage nerf I think should be increased to minus 33%, and a 50% slower firing speed be added on. Now the new upside with which I hope to put the frag back into Fragment. On hit, a ball of fire erupts from the target, dealing 20 fire damage to all targets caught in the blast, and igniting them for 5 seconds, with the fireball being about 50% larger than that of a standard rocket's explosive radius. This is potentially game-changing, but I would hope to see it become a very useful weapon, maybe even becoming on par with the Back Scratcher and Power Jack. Probably not the latter, but most likely the former. I would love to see such a concept added to the game, even if it wasn't to be added to this weapon in particular. As for anything else revolving around on Pyro, I think it would be neat if some of the unused kill icons for reflected projectiles were to be used, even if they are rare occurrences. A higher priority in my eyes, however, would be fixing how the Airblast interacts with some explosives, primarily changing how an interaction between the Pyro and Demoman should play out. I'll go over my sticky bomb suggestions in a minute on the Demoman side of things, but as for pills, we'll cover those here. Pyro has a unique relationship when it comes to reflecting both Soldier and Demo's projectiles. However, some damage calculations seem off, making what one would expect to greatly differ from reality. In regards to Soldier, Pyro can rocket jump via a reflected rocket quite simply, and everything in the scenario makes sense. Since the Pyro doesn't have the natural 40% resistance to self-rocket damage like the Soldier does, he'll take slightly more damage, but also goes a good distance further than the Soldier would, making reflect jumping a rewarding niche to practice and perfect. How Pyro interacts with Demo's grenades, however, is a whole nother story. As it stands, just the calculation of damage from rollers is tricky in most atypical scenarios. For starters, Demoman takes slightly more splash damage from his own projectiles than his victims do, applying to both splash from directs and splash from rollers so as to punish him for being too close to his explosives. It isn't much, taking only between 38 and 70 depending on his distance from the roller compared to the 35 to 60 an enemy would take, but this difference is taken to the extreme when it comes to Pyro. Even in the most logical scenario of Pyro taking mini crit damage from his reflect as well as the extra self damage that Demo takes, he would take at most 95 damage. In reality, however, he takes 85 damage. At minimum. I don't know what causes this, but after reflecting a roller, if Pyro doesn't clear the blast zone, he'll take somewhere between 85 and 160 damage. Run the power deck? Well, you better not pull it out after reflecting a roller, because you're capable of dying from full health if you're too close to the blast. Like, this makes literally no sense, as reflecting a roller can make it almost as dangerous to you as a critical roller. Toss in the fact that the arm timer doesn't reset, and you can see that this can result in a lot of very unfortunate deaths of a Pyro trying to save his team. Needless to say, I'd like to see this change. Good old Tavish Finnegan de Groot. Demo's in about the same state as Soldier, where he is in a pretty damn good spot. And yeah, just like Soldier, he has an incredibly niche but powerful subclass that a lot of people tend to complain about despite having their weaknesses, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. There are a few very minor changes I would personally enjoy seeing added to the game, and I'm sure I wouldn't be alone if these changes were to happen. Okay, so this is actually a class-wide change to specifically change how the Demoman interacts with the Pyro. I don't think that this would go over too well with Demoman if it were implemented, but I think it's an idea that could help with two major problems I see involving Demoman. Pyros blowing themselves up for the good of the team, and sticky spam. So the thing I was thinking could be changed is having it so when any grenades are reflected, their fuse timer is reset, and for stickies, their arm timer is reset if they haven't already become armed. The grenade fuse reset is mostly moot, but does allow for Pyros to save teammates from rollers without needing to pray that it isn't about to explode. As a side note to this, however, there should probably be a limited number of times the timer could be reset, so Pyros can't just infinitely volley a bottle of pills and crash the server with the number of entities involved. The sticky arm timer reset, though, is a big change, since it forces demos to turn their brain back on and let go of right-click in the presence of a Pyro that is capable of reflecting the hail of bombs. I do want to make note here, I don't hate sticky spam and don't think it is an outright broken mechanic, but I know a lot of people don't like it, and I think that if Pyro was able to counter it, it could make Pyro more viable and give a counter to one of the most hated playstyles. Just thought I'd point that out. As an additional point towards countering sticky spam and making demos think about when they should right-click, I think it would also make sense if the reflected stickies did damage to the Demoman's team instead of the Pyros if they're air bursted. And I do want to note, this only applies to air bursting. On top of getting to see the reflected sticky bomb icon much more often, it would be an effective means of countering one of the most hated playstyles that's been in TF2 since the beginning of the game. And if there are any demo mains out there saying that they don't need sticky spam to be good at demo and people just need to get better at combating it, well, put your scrumpy where your mouth is. Get some sick pipe air shots for that frag video of yours. Show us up. Rolling back on the grenade fuse timer reset, maybe this could become a new buff for the loose cannon while we're at it. Not getting its fuse reset when air blasted, making it a good counter to air blast happy Pyros. This idea is probably one of the more controversial things in this video, so as I've said already, let me know what you think. As a last little thing, and this one is about the grenade launcher in specific, it's a bit of an odd one, but it's minor and I've heard it discussed a lot. I think the grenade launcher's pipes should be changed so they don't tumble in the air. It's a very minor thing about the weapon, but given it's the only one that does it, and the effects it has on the weapon are so minor, it would probably just look better if the pipes were fixed to fire straight like the lock and loads. I don't know, just a thought. Please fix the Caber. I know people have been complaining about the Caber ever since the nerf, but I want it fixed for more than the fact that it's trash now. I want to be able to relive my old days once in a while, rather than looking at the Caber sitting in my inventory, collecting dust, misty-eyed about the old days. Oh, maybe someday, Valve. Maybe someday. Alright, one more quick one to finish off demo and we'll wrap things up. As it is right now, the Claymore is an amazing weapon for Hybrid Knight, but terrible for full Demo Knight due to the active damage vulnerability. So, as a balance, I'd suggest that the damage vulnerability be upped to plus 50%, but only be active while the demo is charging. This makes him more vulnerable when using the ability, even when he isn't holding it out, but also makes a true Claymore Demo Knight not just die outright. And with that, we're almost halfway done. I do apologize for making Heavy wait until the next video, but due to how in-depth I wanted to talk about the Pyro versus Demoman mechanics, I did have to chop his segment out of this video lest it be over 20 minutes long. But with that being said, he'll be the front runner of the next video, with Engineer and Medic likely following suit, as all three don't have much I think needs to be discussed. Either way, if you'd like to stick around to catch those next videos, feel free to tap that subscribe button and come on back when the next video rolls out. And as a little bonus, here's a couple of extra clips that didn't quite make it into the video.
I'm gonna watch out for
Let's go, Jakey.
This guy's actually just Jesus.
Oh, I got him, got his ass. Was that two different spies? What kind of brainless plays spy? Oh my god, we're destroying.
I just killed 5 with one flog.
Shit.
Rest in peace, MG Spy.
Weapon balance, holy shit.
The name is a little ironic, I suppose.
Holy shit, you just fucking walk through them.
I'm making a fucking video, like, here's a bunch of weapons I think should be balanced a little better, but I'm not gonna change the flog. I think the flog's fine. And then I do shit like that.
All hail Flog.
The vlog good.
Oh my god.